Welcome everybody to check out this whole new weird thing that I'm doing. This would be in the vein of what we would consider like an Elseworld story or just something different. I'm really excited to share it with everybody. This is the idea of what would happen if we took a hero like Tilt and turned him into more of the villain role. So instead of him fighting against the Council of Elders, he's the leader of it. That was the premise. And we're going to have a whole lot of inclusion for different characters in this story. We're going to get to see some crossover that's never existed before, and I think it's going to be really fun. But this is going to be part one. I don't know how many parts it's going to be, but I know where the story's going to go. There are going to be a couple of elements in it that are going to be left to the flip of a coin, and maybe we'll do that together. Who knows? So thank you, everybody, for jumping into this and being along for the ride. Here's part one for Tilt. It's good to be king. Jimmy's voice echoed down the alleyway, his cries muffled by the pavement beneath him. The narrow corridor between the brick buildings trapped every sound, sending it bouncing between rusted fire escapes and overflowing dumpsters. The air smelled of stale garbage, rainwater, and iron-rich blood. Somewhere down the block, a neon sign buzzed and flickered, spilling weak pink light that barely reached the far end of the alley. His head bounced as it hit the ground again. His teeth chipped and shattered as blood dripped down his chin. The impact produced a sickening crack against the wet concrete. Grit scraped across his cheek as his face dragged along the pavement. Tiny fragments of enamel scattered like broken glass beneath his lips, while thick strands of red drooled from his mouth and pooled under his jaw. "I haven't heard of him. Please," Jimmy pleaded as he tried to get up. His mouth was mangled by swelling gums and broken teeth. Each breath rattled through his throat, wet and uneven. His fingers clawed desperately at the concrete, nails scraping against loose gravel as he tried to push his battered body upright. Tilt placed his boot on Jimmy's back and pushed him back down. The polished heel of the boot pressed between Jimmy's shoulder blades with steady, deliberate force. The pressure forced the air from Jimmy's lungs in a choking gasp as his chest slammed flat against the pavement. The fabric of his jacket twisted beneath the boot, grinding dirt and blood into the fibers.
"I don't believe you, Jim,"
he said as he examined his suit. The man's blood made a wet-looking splash on the black and silver design. Tilt lifted one arm slightly, studying the dark smear across the sleek material. Under the dim alley light, the silver accents of the suit caught faint reflections, but the glossy black sections drank in the darkness around them. The blood looked almost artistic against it, spreading slowly in uneven streaks where Jimmy's face had struck him moments earlier. Behind him, Taylen spun a golden desert eagle in circles around his finger, smirking at the situation. The heavy pistol glinted with every rotation, catching the flicker of the neon light as it whirled lazily around his knuckle. Taylen leaned against the graffiti-covered brick wall like a bored spectator at a street performance. The corner of his mouth curled in amusement as he watched Jimmy twitch helplessly under Tilt's boot.
"Oh, come on, Pat. Let him breathe. He's a good
Taylen started. His voice carried a playful tone, though his eyes stayed sharp and observant. The gun completed another smooth spin before settling briefly in his palm, then flipped back into motion again, as if the weapon were nothing more than a coin he was idly fidgeting with.
"The crap I have to deal with just to keep the Council of Elders running smoothly,"
Tilt thought as he heard Jimmy's ribs crack below him. Bone shifted under pressure with a brittle snap that vibrated faintly through the sole of Tilt's boot. Jimmy let out a strangled cry that dissolved into coughing as pain rippled through his chest.
"Do not tell me how to do my job,"
Tilt said, whipping his head back around to look at Taylen. His voice cut through the alley like a blade. The movement was quick and controlled, the reflective surfaces of his suit flashing briefly as he turned. For a moment, the alley went quiet, except for Jimmy's ragged breathing.
"All right, you're the boss,"
Taylen responded, putting his hands up submissively, weapon dangling off his forefinger. The pistol continued its lazy rotation as his hands rose in mock surrender. Taylen's grin never faded, but he shifted his weight slightly off the wall, showing just enough respect to acknowledge the warning.
"Now, who do I talk to about this paradigm?"
Tilt said, pressing his boot down harder on Jimmy's back. The pressure increased slowly, deliberately. Jimmy's body convulsed as another gasp tore through his throat. The alley seemed to hold his breath with him, the faint hum of the city beyond the brick walls barely reaching this narrow pocket of violence. Above them, a gust of wind rattled a loose fire escape ladder, the metal clanking softly in the darkness as Tilt waited for an answer. Another attempt at a scream tried to escape Jimmy's lips, but the sound was never fully formed. The pressure on his ribs forced the air out of him in broken wheezes. His fingers twitched against the pavement, weak and trembling. Tilt studied the alley for a moment as if the man beneath him had already stopped existing. The distant sounds of traffic rolled through the city streets beyond the brick walls. Somewhere a siren wailed and faded. The city was alive, moving, breathing, unaware that one of its countless secrets was currently pinned to the ground in a dark corner. Jimmy coughed, spraying blood onto the concrete. Tilt finally lifted his boot. Jimmy collapsed sideways like a rag doll, clutching his chest as he gasped for air that refused to come easily. His eyes rolled upward toward the towering figure standing above him. Tilt crouched slowly. The suit shifted smoothly with the motion, the black fabric stretching across his shoulders as he leaned forward. His expression remained calm, almost bored, as he studied Jimmy's ruined face.
You see, Jim,
Tilt said quietly.
People always think pain is the worst thing that can happen to them.
He reached down and grabbed Jimmy by the collar, pulling him up just enough that their eyes met.
It isn't.
Jimmy's pupils shook violently. Tilt's voice dropped lower.
Being forgotten is worse.
He let go. Jimmy collapsed again, this time too exhausted to move. Tilt stood and brushed a speck of dust from the sleeve of his suit. Behind him, Taylen holstered the golden pistol with a satisfied click.
So,
Taylen said, casually, pushing himself off the wall.
You want the short version of what he told us earlier, or the dramatic version?
Tilt walked toward the mouth of the alley without answering. Neon light washed across his suit as he stepped out of the darkness and onto the wet pavement of the street. Taylen followed. Behind them, Jimmy groaned weakly in the alley, curling in on himself like a broken insect.
He said the same thing the others did,
Taylen continued as they walked.
Our friend Paradigm has been sniffing around the docks again.
Tilt stopped. A passing car rolled by, its headlights sliding across his face before disappearing down the street. Taylen noticed the pause and smiled slightly.
Yeah,
he said.
That got your attention.
Tilt looked up at the skyline. Boston stretched out in steel and glass above them, skyscrapers rising in the low clouds like dark monuments. Thousands of lights glowed in the windows. From a distance, the city looked peaceful, orderly, predictable. Tilt knew better.
How many?
He asked.
3 shipments hit this week,
Taylen replied.
2 council couriers missing, 1 lab tech turned up in the harbor.
Tilt said nothing. The wind pushed through the street, tugging lightly at the silver accents of his suit.
Word is, he's recruiting,
Taylen added. Tilt turned slowly.
Recruiting?
Taylen nodded.
Hyper-Evos, sympathizers. People who think the councils shouldn't exist.
Tilt considered this for a moment. A faint smile crept across his face.
Everyone thinks that,
he said. Taylen chuckled.
Fair point.
Tilt stepped off the curve and began walking again.
So what now?
Taylen asked. Tilt's voice was calm.
We find him.
Miles away, across the city, another man was also looking at the skyline. Ben Fallow stood on the rooftop of an abandoned warehouse overlooking the harbor. The wind whipped across the open rooftop, tugging at his jacket as waves slapped against the dock pilings below. He stared toward downtown Boston, where the tallest buildings pierced the clouds. Somewhere in that skyline sat the headquarters of the most powerful organization on the planet, the Council of Elders. Ben clenched his fists. A low vibration rolled through the air around his hands as an energy built beneath his skin. Shockwaves pulsed faintly against the concrete rooftop. A decade ago, he had destroyed a building. Now, he intended to destroy something much bigger. Behind him, a voice spoke.
You really should stop announcing your location like that.
Ben turned. A woman stepped out of the shadows near the stairwell door. Cindy Coran folded her arms.
You know, they can track energy spikes, right?
Ben let the energy fade. Let them. Cindy sighed.
Ben.
He turned back toward the skyline. No, he said quietly, his eyes fixed on the tallest tower in the distance. They've taken enough. Far across the city, inside that very tower, Patrick and Tilt stood before the wall of glass overlooking Boston. The headquarters of the Council of Elders occupied the entire top floor. Soft lights illuminated the massive room behind him. Screens glowed quietly with streams of information from across the world. Shipments, experiments, operations, power. Tilt clasped his hands behind his back as he stared out over the city. Taylen leaned casually against the nearby console.
So,
Taylen said.
What, the good news or the bad news?
Tilt didn't turn around.
The bad.
Tilt grinned.
Paradigm is coming for you.
Tilt watched the city lights flicker below. Then he smiled.
Good.
Thank you guys so much for checking out Tilt. It's Good to Be King Part 1. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you're wondering where all these characters can be found, you can find them in all of our comic books for Catalyst Comic Studio. Tilt has a full first volume if you want to get to know him and Taylen and Cindy and Exquisite. And then Paradigm issue 1 is out as well. And there's a tie-in short story that is called Silhouette Shadow Games. And then there's going to be a whole bunch of new stories dropping as well. Later on, that's going to be a collection of short stories that's tied into the Catalyst Comics universe, plus some bonus stories that are not directly tied. But that's all coming, and I hope you guys really enjoyed this. It's been a blast creating it, and I hope that you'll continue to check it out and listen to it and share it, let people know about it. Thank you guys so much. Be better, be better.